Hey, before we dive into this story, please hit that subscribe button to join our community and never miss an update. I slipped through the grand oak doors of the billionaire's mansion, tray in hand, my uniform crisp but unassuming. The chandeliers sparkled above, casting golden light on the elite sipping champagne. I was just a server, invisible to the glittering crowd, my job to keep their glasses full. Mr. Harrington, the host, strutted past, his tailored suit screaming wealth. His eyes flicked over me, dismissive, as if I were part of the decor. I caught a guest's smirk as I offered a drink, their whispers barely concealed. "Just the help," one murmured, and laughter rippled through the group. My cheeks burned, but I kept my smile steady, professional. I'd learned long ago to swallow the sting of their words. Still, tonight felt different, like the air held a spark I couldn't name. I moved through the crowd, my steps silent, my heart loud. Something was coming, and I could feel it. The ballroom pulsed with music, a live orchestra filling the air with elegant notes. I weaved between guests, balancing a tray of crystal flutes, each one catching the light. Harrington's voice boomed, commanding attention as he toasted his success. The crowd cheered, their adoration for him palpable, almost suffocating. I lingered near the edge, unnoticed, refilling glasses with practiced ease. A woman in a sequined gown giggled as I passed, her voice sharp. "Careful, darling, don't trip. The help shouldn't make a scene." Her friends laughed, and I felt the familiar twist in my gut. But I kept moving, my head high, my tray steady. I'd worked events like this for years, always in the shadows. Tonight, though, the music seemed to call to me, stirring something deep. I glanced at the dance floor, empty but inviting. Harrington clapped his hands, silencing the room, his grin wide and self-assured. "Let's have some fun," he declared, gesturing to the orchestra to play something lively. Guests clapped, but none stepped forward, too poised to risk looking foolish. I stood by the wall, tray now empty, watching the hesitation unfold. Harrington's eyes scanned the room, landing on me with a mocking glint. "What about you, server girl?" he called, voice dripping with amusement. "Think you can dance, or is that too much for the help?" The room erupted in laughter, heads turning to me. My heart pounded, but I met his gaze, unflinching. I set my tray down, the clink loud in the sudden quiet. This was my moment, and I wasn't backing down. The music shifted, a sultry rhythm filling the air, beckoning me forward. I stepped onto the dance floor, every eye on me, their laughter still echoing in my ears. I wasn't just a server tonight, I was something more, something they couldn't predict. My body moved instinctively, swaying to the beat, fluid and confident. Gasps replaced the laughter as I spun, my simple uniform transformed by the grace of my movements. Years of dance lessons, hidden in community centers, came alive now. I felt the music in my bones, guiding every step, every turn. The crowd watched, stunned, as I claimed the floor, no longer invisible. Harrington's smirk faltered, his eyes narrowing as I danced. I was no longer just the help. I was a force. The orchestra leaned into the rhythm, their notes fueling my fire, urging me to push further. My spins grew bolder, my steps sharper, each one a defiance of their mockery. Guests whispered, their faces a mix of awe and disbelief, phones raised to capture me. I caught glimpses of their expressions, some envious, some enchanted. The woman in the sequined gown stood frozen, her earlier smirk gone. I twirled past her, my movements a silent rebuke to her words. The music swelled, and I let it carry me, my body telling a story of resilience. I wasn't dancing for them, I was dancing for me, for every time I'd been overlooked. The room felt alive, vibrating with my energy, my power. Harrington stepped forward, trying to reclaim the spotlight, his voice cutting through the music. "Well, look at this," he said, forcing a laugh, but it sounded hollow. I didn't stop, didn't acknowledge him, my focus locked on the rhythm. The crowd's attention stayed on me, their applause starting to build, soft at first, then louder. I spun faster, my heart racing, my movements a blend of precision and passion. Harrington's face tightened, his control slipping as the room turned to me. I leaped, landing lightly, the floor mine to command. The music hit a crescendo, and I struck a pose, fierce and unyielding. The applause erupted, drowning out his voice, his mockery. I was no longer invisible, I was unforgettable. The orchestra paused, and the room held its breath, every eye still on me. I stood tall, chest heaving, my gaze sweeping the crowd, daring them to look away. Harrington clapped slowly, a forced smile on his face, but his eyes betrayed his unease. "Quite the show," he said, his tone laced with condescension, but it didn't touch me. The guests surged forward, some offering compliments, others asking where I'd learned to dance. I smiled politely, giving vague answers, keeping my mystery intact. They didn't need to know about the late nights practicing in my tiny apartment. They didn't need to know the sacrifices, the dreams I held close. This moment was mine, and I savored every second of it. The music started again, softer now, inviting couples to the floor, but I stepped back. I'd made my point. I didn't need to dance again to prove it. Guests approached me, their tones different now, respectful, curious, even admiring. "You're a natural," one man said, his wife nodding eagerly beside him. I thanked them, my voice calm, but inside I was soaring. I'd turned their laughter into awe, their dismissal into admiration. Harrington watched from across the room, his jaw tight, his power challenged. I picked up my tray, slipping back into my role, but I wasn't the same. The room knew it, and so did I. I was more than they'd assumed, and they'd never forget it. As I moved through the crowd again, refilling glasses, the whispers followed me, but they were different now. No more snide remarks, no more, just the help. Instead, I heard murmurs of, "Who is she?" And that was incredible. I kept my face neutral, professional, but my heart swelled with pride. I'd taken their stage, their night, and made it mine. The woman in the sequined gown avoided my gaze, her confidence shaken. I didn't need her approval, but her silence felt like victory. The night continued, the party buzzing, but I was the undercurrent, the story they'd tell. I was no longer a shadow, I was a star, even in my simple uniform. The evening wound down, guests drifting to their limos, their chatter still alive with my performance. Harrington stood by the door, shaking hands, his charm back in place, but I saw the cracks. He avoided my gaze, his earlier mockery now a mistake he couldn't undo. I cleaned up, stacking glasses, my movements steady, my mind replaying the night. I'd come here to work, to blend in, but I'd left a mark they couldn't erase. The orchestra packed up, the chandeliers dimmed, but I felt brighter than ever. I'd danced my truth, and it had changed everything. I wasn't just the help, I was the queen of the night. Back in the staff room, I hung up my apron, the adrenaline still coursing through me. My co-workers stared, some clapping, others asking how I'd learned to dance like that. I smiled, brushing off their questions, not ready to share my story yet. I'd always danced, ever since I was a kid, sneaking into classes I couldn't afford. Those lessons, paid for with extra shifts and sheer determination, were my secret weapon. Tonight, they'd become my crown, one I wore invisibly but felt deeply. I checked my phone. Videos of my dance were already circulating online. Guests had posted, their captions filled with awe, some calling me a hidden gem. I laughed softly, pocketing my phone, ready to head home. The night air was cool as I stepped outside, the mansion's glow fading behind me. My beat-up car waited in the lot, a stark contrast to the luxury I'd just left. But I didn't feel small, not anymore. I'd walked into that room as a nobody and walked out as a legend. The drive home was quiet, the city lights blurring past, my mind still on the dance floor. I could still hear the music, feel the rhythm in my veins, guiding me. Those moments on the floor had been freedom, a rebellion against every label they'd tried to pin on me. I wasn't just a server, I was a dreamer, a fighter, a dancer. And tonight, I'd shown them all. At home, I kicked off my shoes, my tiny apartment a haven from the world's judgment. My phone buzzed with notifications. Friends, coworkers, even strangers commenting on the videos. "You're incredible," one read, and I smiled, warmth spreading through me. I hadn't danced for fame, but the recognition felt good, like validation for years of hard work. I sank onto my couch, replaying the night, Harrington's smug face flashing in my mind. His words had meant to cut, but they'd only sharpened my resolve. I'd turned his mockery into my triumph, and that was power. I closed my eyes, the music still echoing, my heart full. The next morning, I woke to more notifications, my dance now viral, shared across platforms. Local news outlets had picked it up, calling me the mystery dancer who stole the billionaire's gala. I laughed, sipping my coffee, amazed at how one moment could shift everything. My inbox had messages from dance studios, offering me spots in their classes, even scholarships. I hadn't expected this, but it felt like the universe was finally seeing me. I'd spent years in the background, serving, smiling, surviving. Now the world was watching, and I wasn't going to fade back into the shadows. I was ready for more, ready to shine. I headed to my next shift, a smaller event, but the energy around me had changed. Co-workers whispered, some asking for dance tips, others just staring in awe. Even the event manager pulled me aside, saying, "You're wasted on serving trays." I laughed, but her words stuck with me. Maybe I was. I'd always seen dancing as a dream, not a career, but last night had opened doors I hadn't dared to knock on. I moved through the event, pouring drinks, but my mind was elsewhere. I was imagining studios, stages, a life where I wasn't just the help. The thought was thrilling, terrifying, and utterly mine to chase. That evening, a message came from a dance company, inviting me to audition for their next show. My heart leaped. I hadn't auditioned in years, too busy working to survive. But last night had reminded me who I was, what I could do. I replied, accepting, my fingers trembling as I typed. The Billionaire's Gala had been a turning point, a stage I hadn't expected but had claimed. Harrington's mockery had been the spark, but my dance was the fire. I wasn't just a server anymore. I was a story, a force, a name they'd remember. I went to bed dreaming of the audition, my future unfolding. The audition was a week later, and I spent every spare moment preparing, rehearsing in my cramped living room. I chose a piece that felt like me, bold, emotional, unapologetic. The music carried me through late nights, my body aching but alive. I thought of Harrington's face, his laughter, and channeled it into my movements. Every step was a defiance, every turn a declaration of who I was. I wasn't dancing to prove them wrong anymore. I was dancing to prove myself right. The gala had given me a spotlight, but this audition would be my stage. I was ready to show the world I was more than a moment. The day of the audition, I walked into the studio, nerves buzzing but my head high. Other dancers stretched around me, their resumes longer, their confidence polished. But I had something they didn't, a story forged in resilience, a fire kindled by being underestimated. I performed, pouring my heart into every move, the music my guide. The judges watched, their faces unreadable, but I didn't care. I danced for me, for the girl who'd been called just the help, and laughed at. When I finished, the room was silent, then one judge clapped, then another. I left the studio feeling lighter, knowing I'd given everything. Days later I got the call. I'd made it into the dance company, a spot in their upcoming show mine. I stood in my apartment, phone in hand, tears streaming down my face. This wasn't just a job, it was a new beginning, a chance to live my passion. I thought back to the gala, to Harrington's smirk, to the laughter that had tried to diminish me. They hadn't known who I was, but I did. I'd taken their stage, their night, and turned it into my triumph. Now I was stepping into a bigger spotlight, one I'd earned through years of grit and grace. The world was about to see me shine. I quit my serving job the next day, my heart light but my resolve firm. I'd loved parts of it, the hustle, the camaraderie, but I was ready for more. My coworkers threw me a small party, toasting to my viral moment and my new path. They'd seen me as one of them, but now they saw me as an inspiration. I promised to stay in touch, to invite them to my first show. As I left the catering company, I felt a chapter closing, a new one beginning. The Billionaires Gala had been the spark, but I was the flame, burning brighter with every step. I was no longer just anything, I was unstoppable. Rehearsals with the dance company were grueling, but I thrived in the challenge, my body alive with purpose. The other dancers welcomed me, some recognizing me from the viral video, others curious about my story. I shared bits and pieces, but kept the core of it mine. The struggle, the sacrifice, the fire. We worked on a piece that felt like an extension of my gala performance, bold and emotional. Every rehearsal felt like a step toward something bigger, a life I'd only dreamed of. I thought of Harrington's mansion, the chandeliers, the laughter. That night had been a turning point, a moment that redefined me. Now I was building on it, creating a legacy. My muscles ached, but each pain was a reminder of my strength. I was no longer just surviving, I was thriving, claiming my space. The stage was waiting, and I was ready to own it. The night of my first show arrived, the theater buzzing with anticipation, the seats filled with faces I didn't know. Backstage, I adjusted my costume, a flowing piece that felt like an extension of my spirit. My heart raced, but it wasn't fear, it was excitement, the same thrill I'd felt at the gala. The music started, and I stepped onto the stage, the spotlight warm on my skin. I danced, every move a story, every leap a defiance of the past. The audience watched, captivated, their applause building with each moment. I wasn't just a dancer, I was a force, a queen claiming her crown. The gala had been my spark. This was my fire. My movements echoed my journey, fierce and unapologetic. I felt alive, free, and utterly myself. The show ended with a standing ovation, the crowd's cheers washing over me like a wave. I stood center stage, my chest heaving, my smile wide and unfiltered. I'd done it, turned a single night into a new life, a new path. Backstage, my fellow dancers hugged me, their pride genuine, their respect earned. The director pulled me aside, praising my performance, hinting at more opportunities. I nodded, grateful, but my mind was on the journey. Every late shift, every snide comment, every moment I'd pushed through. The Billionaires' guests had laughed, but I'd had the last word. I was no longer their help. I was their queen. My heart swelled with pride, knowing I'd earned this. The future was mine to shape, and I was ready. After the show, people crowded around, offering flowers, compliments, and questions about my story. I smiled, keeping it brief, letting the dance speak for itself. My life had changed so much since that night at the gala, but the fire was the same. I'd always had it, buried beneath uniforms and trays, waiting for a spark. Harrington's mockery had been that spark, and I'd turned it into a blaze. I signed autographs, hugged my friends, and felt the weight of my new life. It wasn't about fame or revenge, it was about being seen, being me. I'd claimed my crown, and no one could take it away. Every step I took now was a step toward more. I was building a legacy, one dance at a time. Weeks later, I got an unexpected email, an invitation to another of Harrington's galas, this time as a guest. I laughed, imagining his face when he'd heard about my success. I declined politely, no need to revisit that world. I'd already taken what I needed from it, a stage, a spark, a chance to shine. My life was different now, filled with rehearsals, performances, and dreams coming true. I didn't need his approval or his spotlight. I'd created my own, and it was brighter than his chandeliers. The memory of his mockery faded, replaced by the rhythm of my new life. I was dancing forward, unstoppable. Every performance was a reminder of my power. I was writing my own story, and it was beautiful. My story spread, inspiring others, servers and dreamers who saw themselves in me. I started teaching dance classes on weekends, sharing what I'd learned with kids who couldn't afford lessons. Their eyes lit up the way mine had, and I felt a purpose beyond the stage. I wasn't just dancing now, I was lifting others up, showing them they could shine too. The Billionaires Gala felt like a lifetime ago, a footnote in my journey. I'd turned their laughter into fuel, their dismissal into drive. Every class I taught, every performance I gave, was a reminder. I was more than they'd seen. I was a queen, crowned by my own strength. I was building a community, one dreamer at a time. My heart was full, my purpose clear. Months later, I walked into a new theater, my name on the marquee, a solo piece I'd choreographed myself. The audience was packed, faces from my past and present mixed together. My old co-workers sat in the front row, cheering before I even started. The music swelled, and I stepped into the light, my body alive with purpose. This dance was mine, a story of triumph, of rising above. The crowd watched, spellbound, as I moved, every step a testament to my journey. I wasn't just the help anymore. I was a star, a queen. The applause roared, and I felt complete, whole, unstoppable. My past had shaped me, but my future was mine. I was ready for whatever came next. After the show, people crowded around, offering flowers, compliments, and questions about my story. I smiled, keeping it brief, letting the dance speak for itself. My life had changed so much since that night at the gala, but the fire was the same. I'd always had it, buried beneath uniforms and trays, waiting for a spark. Harrington's mockery had been that spark, and I'd turned it into a blaze. I signed autographs, hugged my friends, and felt the weight of my new life. It wasn't about fame or revenge, it was about being seen, being me. I'd claimed my crown, and no one could take it away. My journey was now an inspiration to others. I was living proof that dreams could become reality. Late that night, alone in my apartment, I watched the gala video again, the moment that changed everything. I saw myself step onto the floor, hesitant at first, then bold, unstoppable. I saw Harrington's smirk, the crowd's laughter, and my own transformation. I wasn't that girl anymore, but I was proud of her. She'd taken a chance, defied the odds, and won. I turned off my phone, the city lights sparkling outside my window. The world was wide open now, full of possibilities I'd never dared to dream. I'd been called just the help, but I'd become the queen. And I was only getting started. My future was bright, my path clear. I was ready to dance through every door that opened. My journey wasn't over, it was just beginning, a new chapter written in every step I took. I had more dances to create, more stages to conquer, more lives to touch. The Billionaires Gala had been a turning point, but it was my strength that carried me forward. I'd faced their laughter, their dismissal, and turned it into power. Now I was living my truth, shining brighter than I'd ever imagined. I looked at my reflection in the window, my eyes fierce, my heart full. I wasn't just a dancer, I was a force, a story, a queen. The world would remember my name, not as the help, but as the woman who crowned herself. And I'd do it again, every single night. My legacy was just beginning to unfold. Thanks for joining me on this journey. Please subscribe to my channel for more stories of triumph and transformation.